Okay, welcome to week 13 of our History GCSE revision. I'm going to carry on looking at our Elizabethan England topic, and particularly this week we'll be looking at the Spanish Armada. So on this section B, obviously this will be challenges to Elizabeth from abroad. And the kind of question you may get in the exam will be explain why the Spanish launched the Armada, or why was the Armada defeated? So in both those questions are relatively straightforward. Again, they'll give you 2 prompts and you must use your own knowledge. Okay, so a little bit of background between the 2 countries. So obviously, first of all, Spain had been involved in numerous plots like the Ridolfi plot by supporting and encouraging plots against Elizabeth. Also, Spain controlled a near neighbour country of England, the Netherlands, and the Dutch, who obviously quite close to Germany and Martin Luther, had becoming increasingly Protestant. So the Catholics began to execute Dutch Protestants, the Council of Blood, 1568. So obviously England being a Protestant country wanted to help fellow Protestants, so they began to help the Dutch in secret. So a good example of this is the Sea Beggars. So the Sea Beggars were Dutch sailors who began to attack Spanish ships in the English Channel, who were bringing sort of resources and money into the Netherlands. And then after they attacked the Spanish, they'd go and harbour themselves into English ports. So effectively, the English were harbouring Dutch pirates attacking the Spanish. Also, Francis Drake was routinely attacking Spanish ships in the New World in South America and in the Americas, capturing gold and stealing lots of resources from the Spanish. Because of Drake's attacks and obviously the Sea Beggar attacks as well, the Spanish troops who were in the Netherlands often went unpaid. And there's a famous example in Antwerp where they just went on a massive riot, burnt down buildings, killed people, stole what they wanted. And in response to this, all Dutch people, including Catholics and Protestants, united together to get rid of the Spanish. This was called the Pacification of Ghent. So effectively, a war was starting between Protestants in Holland and basically Catholic Spain. So what did the Spanish do? Well, they sent the Duke of Parma, an experienced military leader, with quite a large army to the Netherlands, and they managed to kill the English allies, the Dutch, who had been supported by the English, and they also signed a treaty with the French called the Treaty of Jarville, which united the French and the Spanish. So this enabled the Spanish to just purely focus on the Dutch and English without worrying about the French. So these tensions between Drake, Spanish Netherlands, and general religious differences really brought Spain and England close to war. Okay, another thing that was driving this was commercial rivalry, financial rivalry. So, the Spanish were the first European country in the Americas accessing the gold, and they'd become incredibly rich from this. Obviously, the English, very strong naval presence, were concerned that the Spanish controlled the Netherlands in particular. By controlling the Netherlands, the Spanish effectively controlled the major river arteries into Europe, and the English obviously wanted to increase trade in Europe, and also they were concerned about how could they trade with the Americas if the Spanish were also controlling that. So English merchants and famously Queen Elizabeth herself were financing attacks on the Spanish, and in one infamous raid, Drake captured over £400,000. So all these raids was forcing Spain to go bankrupt, and to top it all off, famously when Drake came back, Elizabeth knighted him on the deck of his ship against Sir Francis Drake, really sending a clear message to the Spanish that, hold on, we are supporting these privateers, these pirates. And so the Spanish thought, well, if we got rid of Elizabeth, we'd remove this issue of these English attacks. Okay, so just a little bit more detail here about the Netherlands. So the Netherlands became a kind of proxy war, what's called a proxy war between Spain and England, and they signed a treaty called the Treaty of Nonsuch, whereby the English would now actively support action against the Spanish, and they paid for an army of Dutch Protestants. However, they just weren't given enough resources. A lot of the people defected, and very confusing aims about what they were supposed to be doing. So in the end, they just couldn't defeat the Spanish. But one thing it did do going forward was it denied the Spanish the deep water port of Ostend, which would have been vital if they were going to invade England. Another thing that really got up King Philip of Spain's nose was Drake's attack on Cadiz. So the Spanish were building up an invasion force, and Cadiz is one of their major ports. Drake kind of sailed in there in the middle of the night, destroyed 30 ships, attacked a load of other ports on the way back. And the reason why this is important is because it delayed the Spanish attack by a year and enabled the English to prepare their own navy in preparation for an inevitable Spanish invasion. So let's just, again, this is going to be fairly straightforward. Why did Philip launch a Spanish armada? Well, reason number one was religious reasons. They wanted to have a Catholic monarch in England. They were encouraged by the Pope, who'd excommunicated Elizabeth, and he also promised to forgive the sins, absolve the sins of any sailors in the armada. So obviously if you kill people, that's fine, you can still go to heaven. So nice and cheery and religious there. Also, the politics were that Spain felt quite safe because it signed a treaty with the French, the Treaty of Jarville, and that made them they could just focus on attacking the English. Also, they'd been concerned about the English signing a treaty with the Dutch, the Treaty of Nonsuch, and by conquering England, it would provide them with easy access to the North Atlantic and dominate, control its access to the Americas. Also, circumstances helped Spain. So in 1580, Spain acquired Portugal, which gave them access to more ports on the western side and made it more wealthier, more powerful. Also, the Duke of Parma had secured the Netherlands, and it felt safe that his army could be sent from the Netherlands to England. And Elizabeth, with the Treaty of Nonsuch, hadn't really given enough financial support, and this encouraged Philip as he thought Elizabeth was weak. Also, on a daily basis, Philip would have been getting messages of English attacks in the New World, and obviously their support of the Dutch would have annoyed him as well. So in some ways, Philip felt quite rightly that it was his opportunity and his right to attack the English. So what was the plan? Well, the plan was quite simple. Big invasion fleet, 130 ships, with a plough through the English Channel, go to the Netherlands, get the Spanish army from the Netherlands, transport them across, attack London, and get a new Catholic government in. Easy peasy. Obviously, the only problem was they needed to. Obviously, when you're loading soldiers onto ships, it takes time. So this would have enabled the English to go in and attack them. They didn't control, any deep port where they could anchor up and then literally, a bit like a marina, get their troops across easily. So they must have secured the control of the channel. So the English realised this was the Spanish weakness, and they became intent on disrupting the Spanish, as the English army was weak and wouldn't be able to repel the Duke of Parma. So the threat was obviously getting rid of Elizabeth and removing a major Protestant country in Europe. So this map kind of shows what happened. So Spanish was spotted off the English coast because they would have had, like where we are, they would have had people looking out to sea at all times. So it was spotted on the 29th of July. The English Navy sailed out of Plymouth, and 2 Spanish ships were captured. The main armada sailed down the channel and again were attacked at the Isle of Wight. And famously, the Battle of Gravelines is when you can see where the Spanish army is there in the Netherlands. Is the English sent in some fire ships. This panicked the Spanish Navy, who pulled out their anchors and began to sail northwards. So, 6 reasons why the English won. Firstly, they just had better ships, better armed, better equipped. So they had smaller guns, but they were quicker to reload. Okay, and that really, so their fire rate was much quicker. They also managed to panic the Spanish by sending in old ships, burning them up. So lots of captains cut their anchors and went, to try and save themselves. They also were helped by the weather, as you can see on the map on the left-hand side. Heavy gales, forced the Spanish ships north of the Orkney Islands, and lots of them ran aground in the west of Ireland. So they were never really able to kind of regroup and have a second attack. So that helped us. Also, our tactics were superior. We kind of got in there, sort of in their face, a bit like a boxing match. Against a big guy, you've got to get in close. So they got in close because we had the far right, and that really sort of got up. The Spanish weren't kind of used to that, and we obviously used the fire ships. Also, the Spanish lacked supplies. By the time they'd arrived by Plymouth, it had taken them 10 weeks. A lot of their food was rotten. The morale of the sailors was low. And one of the biggest problems was, obviously we don't really think about this these days, there was a real serious problem of communication. There was no communication between the Duke of Parma in the Netherlands and the Duke of Modena, who was captaining or leading the Armada. And they didn't possess any deep water ports. So therefore, it made it really, really difficult for the Duke of Parma to know when to get his troops ready, when were they going to arrive. It would have been a real guessing game. So all in all, lots of reasons why the English won. Okay, so what were the consequences of the victory? Well, the main one was it strengthened or enhanced Elizabeth's authority. There was a huge victory parade in London, and obviously everyone loves a winner, and she was a winner. It also strengthened the English navy, led to more exploration of the world, and also strengthened their alliance with the Dutch. And many people believed, obviously, the reason why the English had won because God was on the side of Protestants, and this strengthened the Protestant faith in England. For the Spanish, it was a huge setback, military and financially, and really was the starting point of the gradual decline of the Spanish Empire. So, all in all, I would say have a go either doing the first question there, why did the Spanish launch the Armada, or why was it defeated? They're the main kind of areas to focus on. So I'm going to do one more clip about education, sports, exploration. I think we're done. Moving on then onto Nazi Germany. So we've probably got about 5 clips to go. Obviously, keep doing questions if you want. Thanks.